Hello everyone and welcome to the Selenium Python Framework series. In this series, we will learn to develop Selenium Python Framework from the scratch step by step. And this is our first session. In this session, we will learn about the framework itself. So let's begin. Before we start with the framework itself, let me show you in this series, you will be developing this kind of a framework where we have the pages files, we have a test files, we have everything separate where we have base page. So for this particular series, I will be using a source demo website for all the demonstration. So we will be doing step by step everything which you need to learn in order to develop a robust framework. So let me run this one. Here I have automated a complete checkout process as well. So let me show you. Simply let's run this one and it will log in first, add a product, then go to the cart, and here you will see that it will click checkout, provide the details, and click on finish. It says thank you for your order, and then there's a separate test case for the login as well. So whole this particular framework we will develop in this particular series. Now let's move towards our first topic of the series, which is framework. So what is framework? So let me show you. Framework is basically a structured approach or the set of guidelines for writing and executing your automated test. Now what it means by a structured approach over here. So let's think of a framework like a house blueprint. Okay. So if you want to build a house, you don't start from scratch every time. A blueprint gives you a structure, guidelines, and standards. Now you can use that blueprint for the multiple houses, make small modifications, and ensure everything fits together perfectly. Similarly, when you're working with the Selenium Python framework, so basically the framework provides a structured blueprint for your test scripts. It basically defines where to put the test data, how to write the test steps, how to generate the reports, how to maintain the pages, how you can separate the locators from the test, why you want to separate the locators from the test logic. So all these things basically covers a framework. Now framework provides a standard way. Basically it organizes your test script, test data and results. The purpose and the goal here is to increase the efficiency, maintainability, and readability of the automation scripts. Now, when we talk about efficiency, so basically, when the code is structured, you exactly know where you need to add or update the code. For example, and again, this will help in the maintainability. For example, you have written 100 test cases, and for every 100 test cases, you need to log in first and then execute the test and then log out. Now, one approach here is that for every test case, you are writing the login and logout steps. So every test case has these steps. So 100 test cases, there is a duplication of those steps for 100 test cases for login and logout, right? So what we will do using the framework, write it once and use them. So it will make your script more efficient because there would be a less number of code or the lines in your framework. And secondly, when you have this separately written, what happens is that tomorrow, if there is a change in some logic in the login functionality, for example, okay. So what happens is that you need to go to the 100 test cases because you have written login steps over there. So you need to go to 100 test cases and you need to update the 100 test cases. Again, efficiency and maintainability. So if it is written once, so you need to modify your code at one place instead of the 100 places. That's why the purpose of using the framework is to increase the efficiency, maintainability, and obviously if everything is written separately in a structured way, so it would be easier to read your automation scripts and the code. So the framework is basically act as a foundation for building a robust automation solutions, right? Let me summarize this again with the example I've given, the house blueprint. So framework is basically like a house blueprint. You build a house, you don't need to start from scratch every time. A blueprint gives you a structure, guidelines, standards, so that you can reuse the blueprint and build the multiple houses with maybe small modifications and ensure everything fits together perfectly. Same goes with the Selenium framework. So framework provides a structured blueprint for your test script. It defines where to put the test data, where to put the locators, what should be the structure, what should be, uh, you know, uh, the logic of the test scripts, where should be written, how to generate the test reports, where to generate the test reports. So this way, it would be easier for you to build a robust test automation solutions. Now let's go to the framework which I developed and showed you in the start of this video so that we can see what structure approach we are talking about so that you can understand and develop the concept of the framework. So here you see that we have this pages directory inside the main folder on the main project. Then we have test folder. So this is the first structure. Then we have config. This is a configuration file. And let me show you this shortly. But before that, let me go here inside the pages. So here we have like login page. You see that in this login page, we have a locators, right? We have locating this one. We are navigating to source demo website and we have a function here to log in into this one. Now, what I will be doing is that in my test, I will be calling this one. So if I go here in my test folder, going to test login here. So this whole logic is written in the here in the login page. So this is basically a concept of the page object model design pattern. Now if I go here, so you see that I am just calling this one here. That's it, right? So these are the steps. I'm just calling this one. Okay. And tomorrow, what happens is that if there is any change in the login functionality, what I will do is that I simply go to my this page file, regardless if I'm using this login in my thousands of test cases, it doesn't matter because I'm just calling those things. So what I will do is that tomorrow if there's any change, maybe there's a change in locator or maybe there's some other change. So what I will do is that, for example, tomorrow there's change in this locator, it becomes username underscore one. So I just change here. That's it. It will automatically replicate it across all my test cases where this login is being called. Okay. So this is, efficiency. This is maintainability. It's easy to maintain. Instead of if I write all this logic here in test, in the actual test, you have tomorrow thousands of test cases and you're using the same code across every test cases and there is a chain. Then you need to change across all your test cases. It may be 50, it may be 100, it may be 1000, right? So here efficiency and again maintainability. And now the third part about the framework is the readability. So you can see that easily you can go to this file. You can see that these are the locators, right? This function is loading the website. This function is logging into this one, right? And the test logic is separate. So simply few basic lines of code and you're logged into the system. We are just calling these things. That's it. Simple and readable. So maintainability, readability, efficiency, all is covered. So far, I haven't added the test data, but as we move with this series, we will do each and everything, adding the test data files, any utility we need, we will do that, right? But just to give you an idea how this works. And again, we need a driver, right? So instead of, initializing the driver in every file, so we can simply go here and add these details over here. Chrome driver, okay? And we are using it as a fixture. We will learn about what is fixture and why we are using this in particular file in our upcoming sessions. And we will learn each and every single line which I have written over here just to make you understand how this code is even working. So that tomorrow if you are developing a robust framework, you should have a knowledge how to develop, right? So I will also explain you what is the base page and what this init means over here, what is self here. So we will cover each and everything why we need a base page why I have written these things in this particular base page. Similarly, we have an inventory page, why I have written these things here, then why we have written those things over here, right? And then we have this requirement.txt which is empty right now. But as we move with this series, I will show you what you need to add over here and why you need to add those details in this particular file. But right now, just want you to understand what is framework and what are the benefits of using the framework. Hello everyone and welcome to the Selenium Python Framework series. This is our second session on this one, and in this particular session we will do the necessary installations like we need Python, we need PyCharm. So let's begin. So in order to start with Selenium Python Framework, the first thing we need is the Python. For that you need to go to the browser and search for download Python. So this is the official website python.org/downloads. I'm using Windows, so that's why it's showing me the Windows option. In case if you're not using Windows, by default it will point out to your respective OS. In case if you're using Linux or Mac OS, in case it's not detecting properly, you can select the respective OS and download this one. Once you download this one, we need to install this Python on our machine. I have already downloaded this one. Let's see the installation process for this one. So let me go here. And this is a file, so I simply right click on this one, run as administrator. It will give a pop-up. It is asking me yes and no, so I will say yes. And this is a screen you will see, and what I will do is that you need to click on this one, check this one, and click install now. Now it will start the process of the installation for the Python. Once it will get installed, what we need to do is that we need to verify the installation. Okay. Meanwhile, similarly, what you need to do is that in order to write a code or build the framework, we need some IDE. So PyCharm is very famous for the Python development. So for that, again, go to the browser and search for PyCharm. And similarly, you need to download the file. So once it has been downloaded, similarly, you need to go here and you need to run this file. Okay, so let me run this as well. And again, it's asking to allow this app to make changes to your device. I'm clicking on yes, and it will also get installed, right? So Python setup was successful. New to Python, start with the online tutorials, documentation. So you can click on these ones, and simply what I will do is that I'm not going to these tutorials as of now. Simply click on close, and once it has been closed, what we need to do is that we need to go to the command prompt. But before that, I have already initiated PyCharm installation. So simply again, very simple installation. Click on next, select the folder where you want, and this is the space required, and this is the space available. So you need to ensure that you have enough space to work with PyCharm. Then click next, and it says please empty and folder. So again, what I'll do is that I will change the folder for this one. And here, if you want to create a desktop shortcut, so check this one. And if you want to update the path, so you can go with this one and create associations. Check this one and press next, then install. So it will install the PyCharm. So meanwhile, what we will do is that let's confirm the Python installation. For that, simply go here, type cmd. So it will open the command prompt, and here we need to type python dash dash version. So if you see the version here, this means that Python has been installed successfully on your system. And once you have verified, now you are sure that Python is already there. Now we are just waiting for PyCharm to get installed on our machine. So we have Python now. Now we have the PyCharm. So PyCharm is ID where will be we developing our framework from the scratch as shown in our previous tutorial, right? So it will take some time to install on your machine, and once it will be installed, let me show you how it looks like. So this done, so click on Run PyCharm Community Edition, click on Finish. Now it will open up the PyCharm for the first time on my machine, and you see that I am getting some particular files because previously in my tutorial I showed you this particular framework which we'll cover throughout this series. That's why it's picking up my existing files and everything. Though I have deleted my PyCharm, but I haven't deleted the respective files and cache files. So that's why I'm getting this particular files over here. But for you, there would be a new screen over here, and then what we will do is that we will start creating the project. So in our upcoming tutorials, when we create the actual project, so I will show you from the scratch. So for example, what I will do is that simply click a new project and name this project over here. So again, this is a directory where you want to create the project. So this is my desktop, so I'll say Selenium underscore POM underscore framework, and click create. So here you have option to open this project in this particular window or in a new window. So if I click on this window, so this particular window will have the empty project. If I click on new, so I will be having two windows. In first, I have this project, and in second window, which will be empty. So right now, just click on this window, and we have an empty project. So most probably you will be having this kind of an interface when you are starting for the first time. So in our upcoming tutorials, we will discuss the framework structure, develop the folder structure, do all the installation required. For example, we need PyTest, we need Selenium. So we will do all the installations, build the necessary things and a structure, and then moving forward, we will develop the whole framework which I showed you in my previous tutorial. Hello everyone, and welcome to the Selenium Python Framework series. In this series, we are learning to develop a Selenium Python framework from the scratch, and we are learning all the key concepts. This is our third session. In this session, we will learn to set up a project. So let's begin. The first thing which we need to do is that we need to create a folder. So you can use any drive or the location. So let me create on my desktop. Right click, new folder. We need to name this one. So for example, Selenium POM PyTest framework. Now, inside this folder, we will be having all our automation files. So it can be your POM files, it can be your tests, it can be your configuration files. Everything will be inside this particular folder. Now, what we need to do is that we need to open the PyCharm, and inside this, we need to open this particular folder. So click on hamburger over here, go to open, and just go to my desktop over here, and I just created a folder Selenium POM framework. Where it is, yeah, this one. So select this one, this window, trust project, click yes. Now this is an empty folder with main.py. This is a welcome file. You don't need to worry about this one. And first thing, what we need to do is that we need to remove this file because we don't need this one. Simply delete this file. And once the file has been deleted, now we need to create a folder structure. Okay. So the first thing we need here is that we need a folder where we can have the page object model for each page. If you don't know about the page object model, I will cover that thing in our upcoming sessions. Right now, understand that page update model is a design pattern which help you in modifying or maintaining the code easily. Okay, so right click on this one, go to new, go to directory and name it as pages. Now second thing is that we need to create a folder, and that folder will contain all the test cases. Okay, so right click on this one, new, again directory and tests. Now besides that, what we need is that when you are working on the framework, you might not be working alone. So you need to provide some information for other people as a quick guide to set up and run the test, which is basically being written in the README file. So right click, new, file, and here basically readme.md file. So here basically what we need to do is that we need to provide a quick guide to set up and run the test, so that tomorrow if any other team member wants to run or set up this project, they have all the instructions available over here. Okay, now what else we need here is that we need a configuration file. Now we have a file known as conftest.py. Now this is a configuration file. Let me create first. So this is a Python file and this is basically conf test. Okay. Now the purpose of this file is that we will be using PyTest fixture and the fixture to browse or set up NTR route. So browse means that we are saying that browser setup NTR route. So we need to open or set up the browser, and once the test has been completed, we need to tear down the browser. Here we will be using the power of PyTest fixture. Now you might be wondering that what is PyTest? Let me show you shortly. Okay. Once we have all the files, and then what you can do is that you can create the file, simple text file. So basically this is requirements.txt. Now the purpose of this file is to mention the dependencies for this project to execute. Right now I just talked about the PyTest, but we haven't installed the Selenium. So in order to execute this project, we have a dependencies, like Selenium is a dependency in this case. PyTest is a dependency. Tomorrow, if you want to implement some other third-party thing in terms of reporting, you need to mention over here. Okay. Now we have a basic structure over here, but we haven't installed anything. Okay. So what I will do is that simply go to the browser and you need to go to the pip.org and search for the Selenium, and similarly you need to search for the PyTest. And here we simply need to copy this one and run this in the terminal. But before that, just like a Selenium package is used to automate web browser interactions from Python. So it's basically used to automate the web browser interactions. But as an automation tester, we need some testing capabilities. We need some testing frameworks, right? So for that, we need to search for the PyTest. So I've already searched for you here. So this is the PyTest basically available. And now the PyTest is basically a framework which makes it easy to write small tests, yet scales to a support complex functional testing for the application and libraries, right? So here they have given a simple example. Then this is the output. You can see a session error or something like that. So that's why we need PyTest in our framework. So we need PyTest, we need Selenium. So we have a automation capabilities, we have a testing capabilities now together. Now, what you can do is that you can install them separately, like copy this one and go to your project and go to terminal, and you can paste this one like this way and press enter, and it will install the PyTest. But what you can do is that you can install Selenium, PyTest, and any other dependency in one line. So simply what I'll say, PyTest space and Selenium. So press enter. Now we have created a folder structure, and after that we have installed these ones. So for me, both PyTest and Selenium is installed. So basically what it is doing is that instead of installing from the scratch, it is already saying that requirement already satisfied, which means that these packages are already installed on my system. But for you, if you are doing it for the first time, then it will install the package, right? So once the packages has been installed, we need to verify the installation. So for that, just go on the left side, and here what we need to do is that simply scroll down. Here we have the site dash packages. Open this one, and you see that we have PyTest, and whatever you have installed, you will see here. So for example, we have installed the Selenium here as well. So if you scroll down here, then you will also see the Selenium over here. So let me scroll down. So here is the Selenium, right? So that's how you can confirm the installation. So let me summarize this particular tutorial. So basically in this tutorial, we have created a folder where we will be having all our script files, either it's a test file or page update files. We created a folder structure over here. So basically we need a subfolder for the pages where we will be having all the page update model for each page. Then similarly we have a test folder. Inside that folder we will be having all our test cases. Then we have conftest.py. Here basically we will be using the power of PyTest fixture, and we will basically be doing a browser setup and the tear down. And requirement.txt is basically used for the dependencies, like this particular Python project needs Selenium, this particular Python project needs PyTest, right? So that's why. And readme file is basically for the quick guide to set up this project and to run the test, right? So now our project has been set up. From our upcoming tutorials, we will learn about the page update model in detail. We will learn about the PyTest, and after that, once we have a understanding of these two, we will move towards writing the code. And for this particular series, I will be using a source demo, and we will see how you can write the test, how you can write the page objects, how you can run the test. We will see everything detailed in this particular series. Hello everyone, and welcome to this Selenium Python Framework series. In this particular tutorial, we will learn about page update model design pattern. So let's begin. So far in this particular series, what we have learned is that what are the frameworks, and then we install the necessary things like Python and PyCharm. After that, we set up the project. Now, when we were setting the project, I created a folder for the pages, and I told you that this is for the page object model. Now, what is page object model, or the POM? So basically, it's a design pattern where each page of the application is represented as a class, and the UI elements of the page are defined as a variables, which are basically locators. Now, when we talk about the page object model, so the operations or the actions that can be performed on those elements are written as methods. Test scripts call these methods instead of directly interacting with the web elements. Now, what it means, if you are doing a linear scripting, what you will do is that you locate the element, then you perform the action, and everything is written in the test. So this is a linear approach. And the problem with this linear approach is that tomorrow you have 100 test cases, and every test case is first logging into the application, performing the test, then logging out. Now, 100 test cases are repeating the same line of the code where they are logging in and logging out, the same steps. And if there is a change in any of these areas, for example, they have changed anything in the UI for the login functionality. Now, what you need to do is that you need to go to those 100 test cases and you need to update each and every test case. So, in order to avoid this kind of situation, we need to separate the locators and the methods instead of which will doing some actions. Okay. Now, when we talk about the structure of the form, so basically we have page classes. So one class per web page, you need to remember this thing. So it contains two main things. One, to store the locators. For example, you are identifying the username field. The locator of that would be in that particular class. Similarly, any other elements on that web page should be in that particular class. Once you have located the elements, now you need to come to the actions. Then you need to store the action in that page class. For example, once you have identified the username field, now what you need to do? You need to type a password. You need to type a username. You need to click. So these are basically actions, right? So all these will be written in the page classes and all these are separated, right? They are not in the test. Then you have a test classes where basically it contains all the tests. Okay. So tests are separate from the locators and their actions. So tomorrow, if there is any change in the locator, you simply open that file and update. Regardless if there are 1,000 test cases using those locators, you need to update at one place. Similarly, if there is any change in the action, okay, or you need to define new action, you need to update on one single page. Okay. Now let's discuss about the benefits of the POM. The first benefit is that it will improve the readability of your test. So your test will look like a real business step. So as a business step, you will be going to a page using typing the admin as a username, password, and clicking on this one. So it will look like a real business step. Secondly, the benefit of using the methods is that you can use those methods in your multiple test cases. For example, you have created a method to login. Just giving you an example over here. Now, if you want to log in before executing your hundreds of the test cases, and the same, this is just like a precondition. So, precondition for your 100 test cases is to log in first. Now, you have created one function and you need to call that function in your multiple test cases. So you don't need to write the same code again and again. Third thing is the maintainability. Just like I said earlier, you need to update only at one place because you have separated the locators and the actions from the actual test. So if there's any change in the locator, so you just need to update the locator at one place, which is in the class, page class. Okay. And final is abstraction because testers don't need to worry about the implementation details. So they just need to call those functions and test case is ready. So now what I will do is that let me show you the framework so that you can map these concepts with the real framework. Now in the framework you can see that we have the pages folder and inside that we will be creating a page object for the each web page. So for this demonstration I will be using the source demo. So let's go to this website. So as soon as you log in into this one or enter this URL basically, so you will land on this login page. Now it has multiple elements like this one, this one, this one, right? So as automation tester, what we will do is that instead of writing everything in a single class or in a single file, what we will do is that we will separate the locators and their actions, and all these will be in the pages. So we'll go here. So you see that this is the pages folder. Inside this we have a login underscore page. So we have a class and it is basically using the base page. I will explain this later what is the base page and how it works. But right now, just understand the page object model concept. So we have a class and this login page class has the username password. So basically we are locating the elements over here. Okay. Now, these are not the part of your test. We are just locating the element in this class, and then we have the function. So when you are working with the Python, so functions are defined using the def keyword. And this is the first function. So first function is doing basically opening the web application. Now again, this is not a part of your test. Okay. In the test, we will be just calling these functions. I will call this load function. So the load means that it will load this www.sourcedemo.com. Okay. Then I have a login function. Now this function is basically using these things, username, password, login, and it will basically perform these actions. So here you see that we are typing, filling the data, right? And again, this is not hard coded here, okay? But this function basically taking the arguments, okay? Now your page is defined. So tomorrow, if there is change any locator, what I will do is that simply come here and update this locator. That's it. So it will automatically reflect on all the places where this particular locator is being used. Similarly, if there is any change in the URL, okay, for example, this is a change, and now this URL is being used 10 times or 100 times in your test, you don't need to update in 100 places. You simply need to update over here, okay. Now you see that it has the functions. Similarly, we have an inventory page, and again we have different locators and the actions we are performing, okay. So this is like loading this one, adding the first product, open the cart. So these are different actions we need to perform on the inventory page. So if I go here and let's log in with this particular user, and what we are saying is that we are clicking on, this add to cart button for the first product. Then we are going to this one, then going to checkout. So this whole process will be automated. So for every page, we will be creating a page object file. It will contain the locators and their actions. Now, let's come to the test part over here. So, if I go here and go to this test folder, so inside this folder, you will be having your all test. Okay, so let's suppose this is the login test, and here you see that we are just calling the functions just like a business step login dot load. So this is a load method which is basically being called from this particular login underscore page. Now when we call this one here, so basically it will log in into the application. Okay, and we are providing the username and password. But what you can do is that right now this is a hard coded value, but you can also get this value from your test data. We can define the test data by creating a folder over here for test data or the utilities, and from there we can just call this one. And finally, we are doing a set. So you see that this is a very simple test case over here. Instead of writing everything like locating, performing the actions, we are not doing this thing in the test. Our focus is that to make it as simple as possible, as maintainable as possible, right? And similarly, we have this test.checkout. So again, it needs to load the application. It needs to log in, right? So we are not repeating the login step like driver.find username find password, providing the value. We are just calling this function and providing the values. And you see that it's really simple over here. Okay. And now, if I go here, conftest. So basically, this is a file where you need to define the driver. Now, the driver is basically, I'm talking about the webdriver over here. So, for example, if your test needs some specific Chrome options, you can define over here. Okay, so you need to define once. That's why this is a part of conftest. So basically, it's a browser setup. So how we want to launch the browser, with which settings we need to launch. Similarly, we have the tear down for this one. Maximize, and this yield means that we are tearing down the driver over here. So we don't want to repeat these steps as well for the test. These are defined, so every test case will utilize these configurations when we are executing the test, right? So let me summarize today's session. So basically, the page object model is basically a design pattern. Now, this design pattern means that we have the page object for each web page. So this is web page, each web page. And inside this, we are storing the locators, and we are storing the actions. Now, when we're talking about the actions, I'm referring to clicking on a button, typing something. And when we are writing the actions, so basically we are creating a functions or the methods which we can call in our test cases. Then we have this test folder where we just calling those functions to make it simple. And in terms of the benefits, we already discussed: improve the readability, reusability, maintainability, and abstraction. So tester don't need to worry about the implementation details. So for example, if tester needs to write this particular test case, tester don't need to worry about how this function is working. Usually, when we are working on the real-time projects, your architect or the senior automation engineer or the team lead usually develop these things, the architecture and everything. And mostly, if you are working as a junior automation engineer, you just need to call those functions, just implement the test, because this particular part in terms of developing a framework is mainly a responsibility of automation architect or lead or automation manager, the senior person. But it is easier for you as a tester to implement the test. Hello everyone and welcome to the Selenium Python Framework series. In this particular session, we will implement the conf test file and we will learn everything around this one. So let's begin. First, let's understand about the conftest.py file. So basically, this is a special PyTest configuration file that defines the shared fixtures, hooks, and plugins for the test files. Now, when PyTest runs, it automatically discovers and loads the context.py files from the test directory and its parent directories. Now, what are the key features here? You might be wondering about what are the fixtures, hooks, and plugins. Mainly, we need to understand about the fixture right now. I will explain the fixture shortly, but right now, to understand this particular file is basically a special PyTest configuration file that defines shared fixtures, hooks, and plugins for the test files. Now, what are the key features for this one? So, key features are that fixtures defined here are automatically available to all the files in the same directory as the subdirectories, so you don't need to import them. Then it acts as a central location for the common test setup and configuration, can contain PyTest hooks to customize test behavior. Multiple conf test files can exist at the direct or different directory levels. Now, this follows a hierarchical scope like fixtures in deeper directories override the parents one. Now, in our case, when we are working on the framework, so basically the driver fixture, we will be using a driver fixture. This would be typically be placed in this particular file because it will be automatically available to all the test file in your test suite. Now, here we are repeatedly talking about the fixture, right? So what is the fixture here? So fixture in testing is basically a consistent, predictable environment or a set of resources that test can use. Now, think of it like preparing a clean workspace before starting a task. You set up everything you need, do your work, then clean up afterward. Now, in PyTest, fixtures are functions that set up resources. Now, when we are working on the framework, we need to do some setups. Maybe you need to set up a database, you need to set up some files. And basically, when we talk about the web automation, we need to set up the browser instances because we need to open the browser first, then we need to perform some actions, right? Then these fixtures basically provide those resources to the test that need them. If I need to use or execute the login test, I need a browser, right? Okay, so this is the main concept of the fixture over here. And then clean up or tear down the resources after the test complete can be shared across the multiple tests. Ensure each test starts with the known clean states. That's the purpose of the fixture. Now, common fixture examples are like database connections with the test data, temporary files or the directories you might need for your test execution, some mock objects or the services you might need, browser instances like Chrome driver, we need a Chrome browser, API clients or the authentication tokens before we start executing the suite. Then the benefits of the fixture are basically the code reusability. So we need to write it once and use in many tests as we want. Now, this would be consistent because we have written it once, so it would be consistent across the test environment. Automatic cleanup prevents the resource leaks. Test isolation because each test gets the fresh resources for the execution, and then makes test more readable and focused because they are written in the separate file. Now let's go to the PyCharm over here and let's write about this our context file. So mainly as for our framework right now, our requirement is to initiate the browser instance. So what I will do is that we will just write those things over here. So it's this fixture thing is basically coming from the PyTest, and we need PyTest. So that's why we need to import. We need to import PyTest. PyTest. And after importing the PyTest, obviously the Selenium WebDriver module actually be coming from the Selenium libraries, right? Which is used to control the browser. So that's why we need to import that as well. So from Selenium import, and we need to import the WebDriver. Right now you see that they are in the green, which means that we have imported these ones, but we haven't utilized so far. So once we start utilizing those, you will see that the color will be changed over here. Okay. And when we start working on this thing, we need to use the fixture, PyTest fixture. So how we can do that? We need to use a decorator. And decorator is basically a @ sign. Now this decorator tells PyTest that this function is basically a test fixture. Okay, that's why we are using this decorator over here. So we will say PyTest dot fixture. Okay, and now what we need to do is that we need to write a function. So in order to write a function, the keyword to write a function is basically def, and then we say driver. Okay, and inside that, basically what we need to do is that we need to create a new browser instance with the default settings. You can change those settings. I will show you those later, how you can change those settings. But if you go with the standard implementation, it will go with the default settings. And here fixtures basically again provide a reusable setup and tear down code for the test. So every time a new Chrome instance will appear, execute the test and close the browser, right? So we'll say driver equals to webdriver dot, for example, I want to use the Chrome. Okay, so I will say Chrome, right? Now this particular line is used to start up the Chrome, and it will returns a WebDriver object to control it. That's the purpose of this particular line. And after that, usually what we need to do is that we need to maximize the window. So what we will do is that we will say driver dot maximize window. So this particular line will maximize the browser to the full screen size. And this will basically ensures that the consistent viewport size across the different machines. This is the main purpose. Now, once we have this thing, now what else we need to do? So we need to set up this one, and also we need to tear down this one. This means that we need to close this off, right? So basically the concept here is that the use of the yield driver. So yield driver means that the yield driver object to test function that it requests. This is where the test runs execution process here, and the test gets the driver object and can use it. So it's just like setup and the tear down. So this yield is here is basically for the tearing down your browser instance. Okay. And then you can close the browser, clean up the resources. So simply what you can do is that you will say driver dot quit. So it will close the browser and clean up the resources. Now this is very simple code, and if I summarize, so we need PyTest, that's why we have imported this one. We need webdriver, so we have imported a webdriver from the Selenium. We used PyTest fixture because we want this function as being treating as basically a fixture by the PyTest. And we already learned that the fixture is basically a consistent, predictable environment or set of resources that test can use. And obviously in PyTest, the fixtures are functions that set up the resources. So resources can be databases, files, browser instances. So here we are utilizing only the browser instances. But tomorrow, if you need to set up the resources for the database, files, or any other kind of the setup, you should be doing that part in the config test. Okay. And because this will provide resources to the test which needs them. So that's why we are using a setup and tear down in this particular file. Hello everyone and welcome to this Selenium Python Framework series. In this particular session, I will explain the base page, what is base page, why it is important, and why you should use the base page when you are working with the framework. So let's begin. In page object design pattern, every page of the application is represented by a page class. For example, if you are getting the page for the e-commerce website, so we have login page where we have all the locators and the actions. Similarly, for other pages like product page, then we have like cart page and so on. Now, if you notice over here, all these page objects have something in common. Like there's so many actions. It can be clicking on element, typing in the input field, getting text from the elements, waiting for the elements to load, validating the page title, the URL. So these are the common actions across all these pages. So let me write it down, like clicking an element. So there are so many elements in the login page, login button where you need to click. Then on the product page, you need to click on add to cart button or the product button, product link. On the cart page, you need to add, remove the product. So there are so many web elements where you need to perform the click action, right? Similarly, there could be common action like typing text in the fields, then waiting for elements to load, and so on. Now, instead of writing these methods again and again in every page, so for example, in this page, you want to click on some button, So you are writing a method which will click an element, right? And similarly, there could be some elements in the product page where you need to again click on the element. Similarly, you have on the card page, you have elements where you need to click on element. Now, in one approach is that we should be writing all these. This means that we are writing this particular implementation in the login page, product page, and the card page. But the problem here is that now we are repeating the code, right? So in the page object model design pattern, instead of writing these methods against each page, because these are common, so we should write it once and reuse them. So instead of writing for each page, what I'll do is that I will move this to this base page, write it once, and then here I will call this one, right? So this is the purpose of using a base page here. So this class, this base page, basically it will be a class. It will contain all the reusable generic methods. Generic methods means like clicking on button, typing, so which are applicable across the different web pages in the application. That's why instead of repeating those in the different pages, we will be writing that in the base page. Now, why we need to do this? So basically, the first thing is that reusability, because we are writing it once and calling it a different page object classes, right? Then it would be easier to maintain. So tomorrow is there any change? So we need to change on the one place instead of changing it for every web page, right? Then it is easy to read, so it will increase the readability. Then it will also easy to scale. So write once. So basically we are writing once and use everywhere. So if we want to use that in the login page, we'll use here. If we want to use in any other page or hundreds of the page, we will be writing once and just using them where it is needed. Now, in terms of maintainability, obviously, if you change the locator strategy or the weight mechanism, update only in the base page. So if you have changing the weighting strategy, so you simply go here in this base page and update. Let me write it here. Update weight strategy. So it's really easy to maintain, right? Easy to maintain because everything is organized. All the common actions are written inside this base page, which are applicable across the different web pages in the application, right? And obviously, it is easy to read because it is written in the base page, easy to read. And finally, it is scalable because when we are working on the large projects like any e-commerce website with the login, search and cards, this is really easy to scale over here. So easy to scale. So let me summarize this particular session about the base page. The base page is basically a base class, and as we are following the page object model design pattern, so we will be writing the different page object classes, like for the login web page, for the product page, for the card page, for the profile page, for the checkout page. So we are writing the page object classes for every web page. Now, problem, we need to understand the problem. Problem here is that there are some common actions like clicking on button, waiting for the element, right? Typing into a particular field. These are the common actions which might be used across these pages. So all these common methods which are generic in nature, which are used more then one web page, you need to move them into the base page, because if you are writing them here, so you are basically writing it multiple times. So when you're writing it multiple times, you need to maintain it multiple times. So if there are thousands of the reusable methods and there are 100 pages, so it's really hard to maintain those ones if they didn't change. So that's why what we do is that we move all these generic common methods in the base page over here. And again, the purpose: reusability, maintainability, readability, and scalability. Hello everyone and welcome to this Selenium Python Framework series. In this particular session, we will implement the base page. So let's begin. In our previous session, we have learned that what is the base page. Now directly implement that one. So simply what you need to do is that you need to go to this pages. Inside that, right click, go to new, go to Python file and name it as base underscore page. And now the first thing is that we need to do the necessary imports. So for example, I need to implement the weights. Okay. So for that, I will say from Selenium dot webdriver dot support dot UI import. And what I need to do, I need to import WebDriver weight. Import WebDriver weight. Now, what I also need to import is that the expected conditions. I will explain you why I'm importing later on in this session. So, from Selenium dot WebDriver dot support import expected conditions as EC. So EC is basically aliases over here. Now let's start with writing the base page. So I will create a class. Let me name it as base page. Now first thing what I will do is that I will create a constructor method, and the purpose of creating a constructor method is that it will be called when creating a new base page instance. So def double underscore init, and inside that I need a driver because I need a browser instance first, right? So besides this self, I need a driver, and then self dot driver is equals to driver. Now here in this particular line, what we are doing is that we are storing the WebDriver instance for the browser interactions. Okay, and then self dot weight equals to WebDriver weight, and here again we need to pass a driver here, driver, and the maximum time is basically 10. Okay, and here what I did is that, so basically I have created a wait object with the 10-second timeout. So this is the wait object here with the 10-second timeout. So this is our first constructor which I have created. Now we know that in the base page, basically a foundational for the page object model, where we are providing the reusable web automation methods, right? So let's start with the first method over here. So simply what I'll do is that let's start with the open function. So open function will actually open the browser and navigate to the specific URL. Okay. So here again, automatically it will give the self keyword and then URL, and URL is basically in the form of string. Okay. And what this function will do, basically self dot driver dot get, and inside that we need to pass the URL. So basically, if I talk about this particular line, so method, we are creating a method to navigate browser to the specific URL, and here basically we will be navigating to the specific URL, right? Now, when we are doing the automation, so we need to find the elements, right? So I'm creating a function which will find the elements. So find, and again self keyword, and when we are basically finding the element, we are referring to locating the element, right? So we are talking about the locator over here, locator, and here the type will be tuple. Okay, and once we have this one over here, so I want this method to return something. Okay, so basically this first line is referring to a method, and this method will return something, and method will basically locate the element and return that element with the explicit weight. We are not using the implicit weight, right? So I'll say return self dot weight dot until then EC. So EC basically is referring to the alias which we use for the expected conditions. You see that? Click on this one, and then now when we are locating the element, so it can be any condition. For example, I want to wait for element to be clickable. Okay, so I will say EC dot, you see that we have different methods. So element to be clickable, element to be selected, right? So I'll click this one, and inside this one I need to tell for which element you want to wait. So basically whatever the locator we will pass, it will wait for that one. Okay, so locator here, and once we have this one, so basically what we need is that you can even go with any other condition. For example, here if we are finding, we can go with the better I think is that we can wait for the presence of the element instead of the clickable. I can go with the clickable over here, but what we can do is that instead of this one, simply I will say EC dot then presence of element. This is more appropriate for locating the element, right? And inside that we need to pass a locator. Okay, now we have find the element. What we usually do is that we need to perform some action once we have located this one. So we either can click or type. So let's go with implement these things over here. So for example, let's implement for the click. Okay, and again on which locator or which element we need to click, we need to provide that. And again it's a tuple, and here I need element to be clickable. For that I need that element, right? So basically here this method will basically click on the web element. Again I will be using the wait condition so that it will wait for that element and then click on it, right? So here let me take an variable over here, element equals to self dot wait dot until, and here I will say EC dot. Now here we are especially talking about the click. So here the best is that we should go with the element to be clickable. And here again we need a locator to pass over here, and once element has been in the state where it's clickable, then obviously we need to click on that element, and that's why I have created a variable and saving this over here. So using this variable, then I will say just click on this. Okay, click, right? So this will basically perform a click. Okay. Now what else we can do? We need to type. So we have different fields on the different web pages where we need to type. So let's create a function for the typing. Okay. And here again we need a locator, and basically again we need to use a tuple over here, and here we might need a text in the string form as well. So I will say text colon str, and again I need an element. So element, whatever element we'll get here, I'll say self dot find. Now this find is actually referring to this particular function. Okay, so that's why to make the code simplify, so I'm using the one which I have already created instead of writing the whole code again and again. So I'm using that one, and again this need a locator. I will provide this as a locator, and once it has this one, then I will. So usually when we are working with the field, so sometimes there is a dummy text provided in the field for the reference, or the placeholder is there. So if there is any provided, so we can clear this one and then start writing. So first I will clear that one, and once it is clear, then I need to write something in that one. So now to write, we will be using send underscore. Send keys is basically used over here, and here when we are referring to a send keys, basically, so send keys, we are talking about a string. So that's why we have provided this thing over here. Okay, so here I'll pass the text. Now we have implemented the open function, we have find, we have click, we have type. What else we can do? So usually commonly we have a text, so we need to extract our text to verify something on the different pages. So write it down here. So def, and I'll say text underscore of self comma locator, and again I need a tuple, and here I need a string here as well. So basically this method will use to extract a text content from a web element. So there's a web element and you want to extract the text. So there are so many scenarios where you need to extract a text and verify that text, right? So that's why it is applicable across the different pages. So that's why we are writing it in a base page. And here this will return what this will return self dot find. I'll pass a locator, and then I will use text dot strip. Now strip is basically a function. What this function will do is that it will remove the white spaces. So for example, there is a text, there are some spaces before the text and after the text. So what we need to do is that we don't need those spaces, we just need a text. So the best practice is that use this strip method. It will actually remove all the white spaces. If you don't use that, so whatever the text will you get, so it will come up with all the unnecessary white spaces which we don't need for the verification purposes. So that's why the good practice is that use this particular method over here. And then I think we should go with visibility of the elements as well. So for example, you want to verify that element is visible or not for different scenarios. Again, I'll say is underscore visible, and here I need to pass a locator and then tuple, and then when we talk about the visibility, so we are basically, it's not about any specific output. So either your element will be visible or will not be visible. So basically what we are saying is that if element is visible, return true, if not, return false. So we are talking about the Boolean. So we need to tell this one. Okay. So we are expecting Boolean over here. Right? And then the good point is that because we are actually checking over here, this method will check if the element is visible on the page or not. Right? Here, I would recommend to use the try and expect. Put this part into try and expect, because sometimes page takes some time to load, right? Sometimes it takes some rendering issues. Sometimes your internet might be slow. So let's go with the try and accept here. So that's why I recommend try and then self dot wait dot until, and here, so we are talking about the visibility of the element. So EC dot, so visibility of the element located over here. And again, this needs a locator, right? And then if the element is visible, we are expecting this function to return true. Okay? So I will say return true. If the element is visible, just return me the true. And accept means if this is not happening, then return me return false. So return false means that the element does not become visible. Okay, and again it's a time based. So within the time it is visible, then okay, else it will throw our timeout. Now we have implemented the basically a base class over here, and here what we did is that we have written all the reusable methods which might be applicable across the whole application, like finding the elements, clicking on the elements, typing on the elements. So now there can be different fields where you need to type something across the application. Again, this is not limited to these functions only here. If you think there is something else which is applicable across the application, you should be writing that in the base page. Okay. And here in this base page, what I have implemented: find, click, type, text. Text, obviously we need to extract the text, then visibility. So these are common things which we usually write in the base page. Finally, just cross check your code over here. So apparently it looks like we have done everything over here, and here we see that this particular import is not being used. Right? We have missed this thing over here. So basically this needs to be written over here and here. So self dot wait. So wait is equals to webdriver wait, and here driver. So now you see that this import is being utilized now. So this was something which I was telling you in the initial of this session, that we need to create a wait object with that 10-second timeout. So now your code looks good. We have all the methods which we need in the base page, and moving forward using this one we'll create the page object for the each pages, and then finally we will be creating our test. Hello everyone and welcome to this Selenium Python Framework series. In this particular session, we will implement the login page object. So let's begin. In our previous session, we have implemented the base page. Now we will implement the page object for this login page. Here we have three fields. One is username, password, then we need to click on the login. So let's go to the PyCharm and let's implement the page object for this particular login page. In PyCharm, inside the pages, what we need to do is that just go here, right click, go to new, go to Python file and name it as login underscore page and press enter. Now first thing is that we need a Selenium WebDriver, and from Selenium WebDriver we need to import by, because we need to locate the elements. So from Selenium dot WebDriver dot POM dot by and import by. And secondly, basically we need to inherit this base page because it has the load method, right? It has this click type, right? So it has these methods, right? So we need to utilize those methods. That's the purpose of creating the base page, so that we can reuse them. Okay. So in the login page, so first thing is that we need to import this one here. And so from dot base underscore page, we need import and import the base page. And now let's create a class and let me name it as login page. And here what we need to do is that we need to inherit the base page. So I'll say base page. And now there were three fields on the page: username, password, and the login button. So let's create a variable called as username equals to, here we will have by dot. So I have already seen that it has the IDs, so I will go with the ID, and the ID for the username is basically username, and similarly we will go for password is equals to, and let me copy this one and paste it over here, and the ID for this particular password field is basically password in small. And now for the login button, similarly we have login underscore button, and here again let me copy this one and paste it here, and the locator or the ID for this particular element is login dash button. And once we have located these ones, now we need to utilize those. So what I'll do is that I'll create a function. So first function will basically load the application. So let me name it as load, and this will basically load our application. So self dot open. Okay, and now this open is coming from this base page, right? So we need to provide a URL, right? So come back here, and here we need to provide the URL. So, and let's create a function for the login here. Def login, and here we need to provide the username as a string, password as a string, right? So comma username colon str comma password colon str, and here again self dot type. Now again we are using the common method basically, which is defined in the base page, right? So this will, here is a tuple, right? So we need to provide in the form of tuple so that we can provide the username. Again, we will use this particular function where we need to type, right? So that's why we have written this in the base page. Now again self dot, you see that we have username comma and whatever the user will provide. Okay, so username. In the similar way, just copy this one from here and paste it here, and instead of this username, so basically we need to provide password, and we need to provide the password over here in the small. So password, and finally this login function needs to log in. So for that we need to click on the login button. So again self dot click. Now this click is again coming from here, and this go here and self dot login button. So we have created a login function because on this particular page we just need to identify the username, password and login button. So we need to type into the username, type into the password field, and finally we need to click on the login button. And we are utilizing these common methods which are used across the application. That's why they are written in the base page, and we are referring or we are calling those from the base page. And here we have just inherited this base page over here. Now we just need to provide a URL over here, which I have already copied. So just provide here and save this one. So our login page object class is ready. In our upcoming sessions, we will write for the inventory page, then we will write for the login page and check out test cases. So before I end this session, let me summarize this what we have done. So we have imported by from the Selenium webdriver com.by. We have imported this base page because we need these common methods. Then we have created a class, and this login page class is inheriting this base page. So if I go here, so this is the base page class which is inherited by this login page class, and then I created a username variable which is being used to identify or locate the username field. Same for the password field, same for the login button. And then I have utilized this load function which is defined in the base page and provide the URL, and I've created a function to log in into the application where I have typed username and password. Again, these functions are called from the base page. So our page object for the login page is ready. In our upcoming sessions, we will write for the inventory page and other pages, then find the test cases, and then we will run our test. Hello everyone, and welcome to this Selenium Python Framework series. In this particular session, we will implement our first test, which is the login test. So let's begin. In our previous session, we have implemented the login page object, and it has all the locators we needed. It has the page which we need to navigate. Now what we will do is that we need to implement the login test from this login page object. Now if I go to this conftest.py, so this has a driver. So we have driver, we have a login page object. Now inside this test folder, we will create our test. So right click on this one, go to new, go to Python file, and you should start the name with the test because we are using the PyTest. PyTest will recognize the test when it starts with the test keyword. So test underscore login and press enter. Now from the page object, we need to create our test. So we need to import that one first. So from, and that's inside the pages. So from pages dot login underscore page, and we need to import the login page class. Now once we have this one, what we need to do is that we need to create a function, and again the function name should start with the test because we are using the PyTest, and this function will call these page objects in order to run those scripts. So def test underscore login, and now in order to execute the test, so basically we need a driver, and that driver is configured here as a fixture in this particular file, which is conftest file, right? So this is the file where we have this one. So simply in the test underscore login, what we need to do is that we need to pass our driver, and here what we need is that we need to create an object. So login is equals to login page, and here we need to pass a driver. And once we have this one, now we will be able to call those functions which are written in the page object file. So if I go to this login page object file here, so we have this load function, we have this login function, and this login function needs a username and the password, right? So simply what we'll do is that just go back here. So first thing is that we need to load the application. So using this one login dot, now you see that we are getting those function parameters, everything, here, and we have this load method from this particular page object. Let me show you again. Login dot and load, and this load is coming from login page, and this login page is basically a login page object, right? So we just need to call here. I'm not locating an element over here, I'm not performing an action, so simply I am calling the functions from the page object, right? So this will actually open the application. Now what I need to do is that I need to log in into the application. So login dot, so we have this login method, and here we need to provide the username, and you see that it needs a username and then it needs a password, right? And if I go to secret source, the demo website, which is here, we have written the information. So we need to go there, and from there we need to copy the username and password, and we need to provide those here in this particular method. So let's go to the browser over here, and this is our username, standard underscore user, and the password is secret sauce. Now let's go back to the PyCharm and provide these values. So the user is basically a standard underscore user. So standard underscore user, and the password is basically a secret underscore sauce, secret underscore sauce. Now we have just load the application, we have provided the username, password, and this will actually log into the application. However, as an automation tester, what we need to do is that we need to do the assertions, we need to do the verifications. Now as of today, we haven't done the page object for the inventory page or the other pages, because after login, another page will load, an inventory page will be loaded. So I need a page update from those so that I can assert the value, right? So in our upcoming tutorials, I will implement the inventory page, and after implementing the inventory page, then we'll come back to this particular test, and then again what we will do is that we'll import the pages, for example pages dot inventory page, import the inventory class, and then we will do some assertion over here. Right now, just to give an idea, what we do is that assert keyword is used to assert the values. If you don't have a knowledge about the PyTest, I would recommend you to just go to their official website so that you can develop an understanding for this one. And here you see that in order to execute it, we need to provide PyTest. And here, if you see that the test name starts with the test, right? So, and also what you can do is that you can go to my channel, and I have a complete playlist around this PyTest, so you can refer that one as well. But also you can refer this one. There are how to guides here, get started, how to guides, explanations. So everything is available. So how you can install using this command. Then here you have create your first test, then how you can run this test. So you will see how and everything regarding to this PyTest. And here run multiple tests. So PyTest will run all the files, the form test underscore static. So test underscore static means it will pick all the test files in that current directory and its subdirectories, right? So let's go back to the PyCharm and just provide this command and see what happens. So provide the PyTest over here and just press enter. You see that one test got selected and execution was very fast and the test got passed. So it's actually open the browser, navigated to source stem, name a website, provide a username, and click on the login. So in our upcoming sessions, what we'll do is that we will write the page update for the inventory page, then the test case for the checkout process. And here in this particular login test, we haven't yet done the assertion, which is really important, but assertion needs to be done after login. So actually we need to ensure that login is successful. So it should redirect to the inventory page. So once we have the page update for the inventory page, we will do a assertion over here, right? And then we will do the checkout test case at the end. Hello everyone and welcome to the Selenium Python Framework series. In this particular session, we will implement the .environment file in the framework. So let's begin. So far what we have done is that the URL is defined in the page object for the login page. And if I go to the credentials for this one particularly, so this is being defined or passing in this particular test. And this is not a good practice. We need to make more flexible framework, and tomorrow if there are multiple environments like QA, staging and pre-prod, and every environment has a different configurations, then you need to manage them separately. So what we'll do is that we'll create an environment file, and from that environment file we'll pass the values over here. So let's go to the browser over here. In browser, what you need to do is that you need to search for python-dot-environment. So basically, this python-dot-environment reads the key value pairs from the .env file and set them as the environment variables. So in order to use this one, what we need to do is that we need to copy this one and we need to go back to the project and install this particular Python package. Now inside the project, what you need to do is that you need to go to the terminal, and here you just need to paste this command and press enter. Now it will install this particular package. So if the package is already installed on your system, So it will say that requirement satisfied. In case you are installing this for the first time, it will properly install this particular package. Now, once you have this package, what you need to do is that on the root directory, right click on this one, go to new, go to file, and here we need to create a file .env and press enter. And now what we need to do in this particular file, so basically we need to move the base URL, username and password to this particular file. So what I'll say here in the caps, base underscore URL is equals to, and then we have username equals to, and then password equals to. And now what I need to do is that simply this is the URL. So copy this from here, go back to .environment file, paste this over here, and let's go to this login test. And what we need to do is that we need to move this from here. So copy this one, go back here, provide this one, and then what we need to do is that similarly we need to copy the password from this file, from this test file, secret underscore sauce, copy this one, go back here and paste this one. Now once we have moved this one, what else we need to do? So basically we need to update the login page, because the login page right now is a hard-coded value. So if I go here and click on this one, so you see that it has a hard-coded value. We need to remove this one. But in order to do this, what we need to do is that we need to update this conftest file. So we first need to update this file. So because right now it has only the driver fixture, what we need is that we need a fixture for the base URL and for the credentials. Okay, so let's create those ones. So the f, and I will say base underscore URL, and here this should return something, right? So return os dot get environment, and we need to get the base URL. You see that it has this particular value coming here. Now similarly we need a function for the credentials, but this needs to be a PyTest fixture as well. So copy this one from here, and on top of it just paste this one, just give some space, and again copy this one, paste it over here, and name this function as credentials. And here this should return two things, username and password. So what I will say, remove this part, and here we have these curly braces because we need to provide two things. So first one is username, and here we will say os dot get environment, and here we need a username. So you see that username equals to this one, select this one, and comma, then we need a password here, and again os dot get environment, because we are getting the values from the environment file, right? And here I will say password. Now we have these three functions which are basically our PyTest fixtures. Now once we have this one, what we need to do is that we need to update this login page. So instead of this particular hardcode value, what I will say, because we need here a base URL, so comma, so base underscore URL, and the URL will be basically a string. And now instead of going this hard-coded value, we will just pass the base URL over here. So just copy this one from here and pass this over here, right? So here we have set up the environment file, and from environment file we are getting this base URL. Now we have the base URL. What else we need to do? We need to update the test file. So go here, because here we are passing these hard-coded values, right? So what I'll do is that let's remove these from here, and besides the driver, we need what we need. We need base URL and we need credentials, right? So we need credentials and the base URL, and simply what I'll do is that I'll say login dot load, and I need to pass the base URL over here because this base URL has the value, right? And simply I'll go here and say login dot, then we have a login function on the method, and here I need to pass the credentials. So here you will see that I will not provide the hard-coded value. I will just pass credentials, and here I need to pass username, then I need to pass the password. So again, comma, then we have credentials, and here I need to pass the password. So simply what we have done is that instead of passing the hard-coded values in the test, we moved those values in the environment file. So tomorrow, if you have multiple environments like in QA, prod, so you can define all the configurations over here. And then what I did is that in the conftest file, I created two fixtures, one for the base URL and one for the credentials, and I'm getting these values from this particular .environment file, and then I updated the login page over here, and here I'm just passing this URL, and once passing this URL, and then I'm calling these function into the login test. So no hard-coded value, simply passing the values from .environment file, updated the contract file, updated the login page object file, and finally, very simple, no hard-coded value, very precise test. Now just cross-check the files before we run this one. So basically, start with .env file. So it has the base URL, it has the username, it has the password. So it has all the things, no syntax error over here. Then we updated the conftest.py. So open this one, and here, so basically here we need to import the environment here as well, because we are using the environment over here. So simply what we need to do is that, so we have OS already implemented. So we say from environment import load underscore environments. And once we have this one, then we need to load. So before here, so what we'll say load underscore environments. That's it. And then we have this driver, and we have a count driver maximizing it, then yield. Then we have a fixture for the base underscore URL for the base URL, and from here return os.get environment base URL, then fixtures. So we have this for the credentials. We have provided everything over here. Now let's go to the login page object file, and here we simply replace the hard-coded value and we provided the base URL over here, and nothing else we have changed over here. And finally we have changed the login test in this file. So we have simply provided the base URL credentials over here, and then passing the base URL and the credentials over here. Now let's run this one and simply just provide PyTest here and press enter. So you see that it got executed successfully. Hello everyone and welcome to the Selenium Python Framework series. In this session, we will learn to handle the Chrome Password Manager. So let's begin. First, let's understand what is Chrome Password Manager, and then we will see how we can handle that one. So simply on the browser, just provide the username over here, provide the password and click login. So as soon as you click on the login, you will see this password manager over here. And here this basically appears for the security reasons, and if you try to locate this button you can't do it. But in automation testing we somehow need to handle this one. Either we can click on this one or somehow handle this one. So in order to handle this one, what we need to do is that we need to use the Chrome browser options. Okay, so let's click on OK over here right now and go to the PyCharm. And here in the conftest file we have this Chrome driver. So here basically what we need to do is that we need to create a Chrome options object, and in order to do that what we need to do is that we need to import the Chrome options. So basically what I need to do is that I need to import from Selenium dot webdriver dot Chrome dot options, and from that basically I need to import the options. Now once we have imported this one, so what we need to do is that we need to create a Chrome options object. Based on that, basically what we will do is that we will set the Chrome browser options. So we will be opening the browser with certain options. So what I'll do is that let's create the object. So options equals to options, and once we have this Chrome options object, now using that one what we can do is that we can use to disable this particular manager. We can stop the Chrome from offering to save the password, fully disable the password manager, stop Chrome from showing the password leak. So we can set these options over here. So simply what we need to do is that here using this one, so ops dot add experimental option, this one add underscore experimental option, and here we need to set the preferences. So in double quote preferences, comma, and in the braces, so inside the braces we need to provide those preferences. So first thing is that we need to stop Chrome from offering to save the password. So how we can do that? So simply what we need to do is that we need to provide in double quote credentials underscore enable underscore service, and this particular needs to be false. Okay, we need to set this as false. After that, what we need to do is that we need to fully disable the password manager. So for that we'll say file dot password underscore manager underscore enabled, and again this needs to be false, right? And the third thing is that we need to stop the Chrome from showing the password leak. So again, in a similar way, we say profile dot password underscore manager underscore leak underscore detection. And again, this needs to be false. So all options are in the false state right now. So what we need to do is that here in the driver, we need to initialize this Chrome driver, WebDriver, with the above options, right? So this is the purpose is that we are opening the Chrome browser with the certain options we are setting for this one. Now, basically, in order to handle this password manager, what our approach is that we are setting up the options in the Chrome in such a way so that this pop-up should not appear. That's the simple idea behind this one. Okay, so once we have this option, so what we need to do is that we need to go here and say options equals to which options we are talking about. We are talking about these options. Now we see some code errors. So what I'll do is that instead of fixing it manually, simply we'll use the power of the AI. So simply I'll copy this part of the code from here and let's go to the ChatGPT. I'll say fix the code and just provide this one over here. So basically you are very close. The main issues are the indentation and the missing imports. So basically we have already imports this one. So basically if I go here and show you, so we have already have this import, and here the main purpose is the code intention. So what I'll do is that, so simply go here and copy this part of the code from here, and again you see that this is the same code, just spacing and code intention. So simply if I go back here and here this part of the code and paste it with this one. Now you see that the error has been fixed. Now what I'll do is that before executing the test, what I need to do is that simply go here in the login test basically. So simply I'll put some static time right now, time dot sleep, and in 5 seconds. Now what I'll do is that let's run this one and see what if we can face this password manager or not. So let's run this one and see what happens here. So here you see that we haven't received this password manager, the Chrome password manager, because what we have done is that we have handled this through the Chrome options over here. So these were the options which we used in order to handle this one. If I remove this code and run this one, so what happens is that we will receive that particular Chrome password manager. And once we have that manager, we cannot interact with the other elements. So our script will eventually fail. So that's why it is really mandatory to handle this password manager. Hello everyone and welcome to the Selenium Python Framework series. In this particular session, we will learn to implement the screenshot utility. So let's begin. So when you're working on the framework, so basically in your project, you might need to take the screenshot in case of the failure. And the best approach is that you should create a utility for a screenshot and use that. And let me show you how you can do this. Simply go here and create new Python file and name it as screenshot utility. Screenshot underscore utility and press enter. Now, when we talk about the utility, what we need to do is that we need to create a folder where we have all those screenshots. So when we are creating the function, so basically we need to provide this information where we need to create a folder, with what name we need to create a folder, and when we are saving a screenshot, so obviously we need to name this one. And the best practice is that the name of the file should be unique. So basically, when we are doing or working on the real-time project, we need a timestamp with the screenshot so that we can understand that at what point of time this happened. So the first thing is that we need to import the OS, because we have to create a folder, and we need to import a date time so that we can have a date time with our file name. So from date time import date time, and now what we need to do is that let's create a function, and let me name it as take underscore screenshot, and it requires basically a driver, and name equals to screenshot. And now what this function will do, basically it will take a screenshot, and again we need a folder, so I will say folder is equals to screenshots. And when we are building a logic, so in case sometimes your folder might not exist, so what we'll do is that we'll say that, okay, if the folder does not exist, create a folder, if with the if condition, okay, if not os dot path dot access, and we are talking about this folder one, we are actually referring this one, if there's no folder with this one, okay, and then we say, okay, os dot, there is make directory, make directories, and we need to give a folder here. So here basically we are referring to this screenshot. We are saying that if the screenshot folder is not there, just create a folder with the name of screenshots. Now once we have this thing, so what we need is that we need a timestamp thing. So timestamp is equals to date time dot now. So now we'll give you a current time and date, and then we need some string formatting, so dot strf time. So this is basically a format for formatting, and whatever the format you want. So basically usually what I do is that I'll just go with percent year, then percent month, percent day. So and underscore, basically I need then percent r, percent month, and percent second. So basically I'm just formatting a time, I'm getting the current time and formatting this in this particular format. And once I have this format over here, so now file path equals to f literal, and here I need folder name, then forward slash, then we need a name, and this is a name, okay, and what I need is that underscore timestamp dot png. So basically when we are getting a file, so this folder will give us a screenshot, then the name is basically a screenshot, and the time. So basically this would be eventually a name of your screenshot file. So once you have a formatted time, you have file name, now you have created a directory. So what we need to do is that we need to save the screenshot. So driver dot save underscore screenshot, screenshot, and what we need to save? We need this file path to save. Basically, we are saving the file, right? And then just give a print statement with the f literal, and we say a screenshot saved. And for the reference, what we will do is that we are just passing this file path over here. File path. Now we have created our utility, and our best practice is that it should create a screenshot when the tests fail. So we need to check after every test. Okay. And when we are using the PyTest, so basically we need to utilize the concept of the hooks. So the hook will basically runs after every test. It will check if the test failed, gets the browser driver, and then takes a screenshot with the test name. Okay. So for that, we need to go to this conftest file. And here what we need to do is that we need to create a PyTest hook over here. And simply we say add PyTest dot hook implementation, and here hook wrapper equals to true. Hook wrapper is equals to true. And now let's create a function. Let me name it as PyTest underscore run test underscore make report, and we need to pass item. And now basically we need to take a screenshot only on the test failure. So basically we need to wait for the outcome of the test. So we were asking this particular function to wait for the outcome, so yield, and then report is equals to outcome dot get underscore results. So we are basically getting the test results. So we need to identify which test got failed. So we need to yield the outcome. We need to get the results from that outcome so that we know which test got failed or which test got passed. So once we have this, now put a condition if report dot when is equals to call and report dot failed, then if this is a fail, so basically then driver equals to item dot function args dot get driver, and then another thing. So if we are getting a fail, driver is getting a fail, so what we need to do is that we say if not here on the next step, if driver then take underscore screenshot, and you see that this is coming from the utility we just created here, this one. So we need this from here, right? Take the screenshot and say driver, then f literal, and then we say failed underscore item underscore name, item dot name. And here we are getting some error over here because what we need is that we need to fix this part. And basically in order to fix this one, we actually need to import this one here. And now once you have imported this one, you see that there's no error over here. Now what I'll do is simply let me create a session which should fail so that we can see how this utility is working. So if I go here and here, let me create a simple session. Cert, for example, I'm just giving a random thing over here, wrong underscore URL and driver dot current URL. So basically in current URL, I'm trying to assert out something random and obviously should fail in this case. And I'm just printing a message, login, fail if this session fails. And I'll say URL does not match. So when I execute this one, obviously we will not get this thing into the URL and this will a session fail automatically. Now let's run this one, see what happens over here. So simply we'll say PyTest tests folder. Inside that we have this test underscore login.py dash verbose and press enter. So this should fail and it should take a screenshot because this is getting failed. And here you see that our test got failed because this assertion failed. And here you see that it created a screenshot folder. Inside that we have this particular image which after the failure of the assertion got captured. And here you see that fail underscore test underscore login, we are getting a proper date and time format which we have mentioned in our utility. So let me show you the utility again. So this part basically, this part. So I hope you now understood how we created the screenshot utility and how we can use that in our framework. Hi everyone and welcome to this Selenium Python Framework series. In this particular session, we will learn to implement the HTML report. So let's begin. So when we are working on any kind of the framework, the most important part is the reporting. So once the execution is completed, you need some report to share with your management. And also you need to see what is happening with the application, how many test cases got passed, how many got failed, how many got skipped, right? So in order to implement the report in this particular framework, the easiest one is to use the PyTest-HTML report. So for that, what you need to do is that you simply need to go to the browser and you need to search for this PyTest-HTML and finally you need to land on this particular page. Now in order to install this one, so simply what you need to do is that you need to copy this one from here. You need to go to your PyCharm and paste this command. But before that, what you need to do is that scroll down and let me show you how it looks like. So if I click on this one, so this is how it looks like the environment details, the Python version you're using, summary around that one, fail, pass, skipped. If you want to implement the screenshots, you can also do that as well. And you can also do a lot of stuff around this one that I will show you in this particular tutorial. Now, what we need to do is that simply click on this documentation, click on installing this one, and simply pip install. This is the command which we already copied right now. Now simply go back to the PyCharm over here and paste this command and press enter. So currently it is already installed on my system, but for you, if you're installing for the first time, it will install properly on your system. Now once you have installed this one, again, this is really easy to use. So let me go back to the browser and let me show you how you can use it. Simply go to the user guide over here. And here, the first thing is that report streaming. So what it means that in order to stream the result means that basically you want to generate the report for each finished test instead of waiting until the full run is finished. So if you want to generate per test, simply what you need to do is that you need to go with this particular flag, which is generate underscore report on test equals to true. You can do this. Now, when we share some report with the management, what happens is that every HTML report comes with some assets, some CSS files. So in PyTest-HTML, we have an option of creating a self-contained report, which means a single file. So basically, in order to respect the content security policy, several assets such as CSS and images are stored separately by default, right? So in order to have everything into a single file, so we can use the self-contained report. And in order to do that, simply we need to go with PyTest -html report.html -- self-contained HTML. So everything will be inside that HTML file. And if you want to change the appearance, for example, you want some different layouts, some different themes. So what you can do is that you can implement your custom CSS and you can pass this as a argument like your CSS. So simply just copy this command from here and just go here and simply paste this one. So what it will do is that it will simply execute your test and create the HTML report. Now, if I press enter, so it will start executing our test. So we have one test which should fail so that we can see the failure in the report as well. So you see that it got failed and we have report over here. And if I go here, you will see that report is generated. So right click and go here, open in Explorer, and here's my Explorer. So simply open this one and you see that we have this Python version, we have these packages generated on this, then we have this particular test which got fail. If there are more than one test cases, so we will get all the information, the duration, links, and we can add the screenshot just as I showed you earlier, right? Now, if I go back here into the PyCharm, so basically you see that it is generated on the root folder. What happens if I want to generate in a reports folder? So what I need to do is that simply here, instead of report.html, here I say reports, and I need to provide, basically I'm creating a folder here. So it should be inside the folder, right? So just press enter. And now what happens is that it will create a folder reports, and inside that this HTML report will be there. Okay. So you see that the reports folder has been created and the new report is basically created inside that one. And right click on this one again, open in Explorer, and let's double click on this one. And again, you see we have a report with the proper session failure and what is failure. Right off, again, this is very basic PyTest-HTML layout, but like a development, we always use some dark theme, some more additions. So I've already developed one CSS for you guys, and I'll show you how you can use that one. And you can write your own CSS, or you can ask the developer to write the CSS for you. And even you can use the AI for this one as well. So let me show you how you can do that. So simply what you need to do is that on the root folder, just right click, go to directory, name it as CSS, and inside that I will be copying this particular file. There's a file I've already done, so let me open this one and let me show you. So this is the file. So simply I will copy this file, go back into this particular CSS folder, and I just need to paste this one. So you want to see what is written, let me show you. So once here, you have the CSS, and this is the CSS file basically, and it has basically a different colors, fonts, layout, and everything for the dark theme. And if you want a proper formatting for the CSS file, just try PyCharm. You click on this one because it's supported by this one. But I am not doing this in this particular tutorial. Simply what I'll do is to just run the test again, and this time what I will do is that I will simply pass this CSS, or we can utilize this CSS in our test. Now, in order to do this, simply what we need to do is that we need to, just like I said, we need to give the reference of this sdet-dark.css when we are executing. So simply, let me show you the command. So this is the command, PyTest-HTML equals report.html. So if I want this report into this particular folder, so what I'll do is that simply go here. Again, I will say reports / this one, and then again self-contained HTML report, and this is the CSS which we need. Just press enter, and again it will start the execution. That should fail, but this time you will see a dark theme for the report, which look much better than the previous one. So simply go here. This is a report, and again open into the Explorer, and just click on this one. And now you see this is something more beautiful than the ones which we see earlier. So that was this one, and now this is the one. So you can even do with your CSS. Even you can change the colors, themes, and layout, and anything. Not the layout, basically the theme. Basically, you can do, and you can add some title to your report as well. So that's how you can basically implement the report in your Selenium Python framework.